aliens left soaked in rain, human builds stormproof shelter from nothing. The storm rolled across the alien sky like a living beast. Purple clouds split open with lightning, and sheets of cold rain hammered the training grounds of the Galactic Academy's survival course. Cadets scattered, their species' feathers, scales, and fur drenched in moments. The ground, spongy and alien, turned to mud beneath clawed and webbed feet alike. The instructors, safe under a hovering shield dome, merely watched. Day 1 of the Wilderness Module, Instructor Kelran announced, voice booming over the storm. You have 3 cycles to endure the weather and remain operational. Shelter, warmth, and food are your objectives. Fail, and you'll understand why survival is the foundation of war. Dozens of cadets, representing 20 species, exchanged worried glances. None more than the young Thrixan cadet, Jirel, who stood shivering. His species was arboreal, fur too thin for soaking rains, claws too blunt for digging. His soaked maner plastered against his neck. He sneezed, once, then twice. Beside him stood Cadet Mason, the lone human. The only deathworlder in the class. He was smiling. Not worried. Jirel croaked, pulling his uniform tighter, though the fabric was already clinging uselessly to his skin. Mason shrugged, brushing rain from his short hair. Nah. This is nothing. He looked up at the flashing sky. Reminds me of camping trips back home. Camping? Jirel echoed, barely able to hear over the thunder. You chose this kind of misery? Yeah, Mason said casually, kneeling in the mud. For fun. The aliens struggle. The cadets scrambled. A feathered Kivari tried to spread her wings, only to collapse under the waterlogged weight. A scaled Varix attempted to dig a pit, but the mud kept collapsing. Groups huddled under broad-leafed plants, but the downpour quickly tore through the foliage, leaving them dripping and miserable. Jirel shivered violently. His claws scrabbled uselessly against the mud. We will freeze, he wailed. This storm will drown us before the first cycle ends. Mason only hummed to himself, studying the terrain. His eyes flicked to the broken branches tossed by the wind, the stones jutting from the ground, the broad leaves scattered in piles. He began gathering. Human ingenuity. Help me with this log, Mason called to Jirel, pointing at a heavy branch half buried in muck. Jirel blinked. You want me to move it? Why? Foundation, Mason said simply. He bent his knees, wrapped his arms around the log, and heaved. Muscles straining, he rolled it into place. Every shelter needs a frame. Shelter. Jirel repeated, as if the word itself were madness. With what? We have no tools, no supplies. Mason grinned. That's the fun part. Over the next hour, Jirel watched in stunned disbelief as the human worked. Mason drove sticks into the mud, angling them like ribs. He stripped vines with his bare hands, tying them together with knots so quick they blurred. He layered broad leaves, overlapping them in careful rows. When a gust threatened to tear the frame apart, Mason just laughed and reinforced it with stones. When rain soaked the first set of leaves, he adjusted the slope, making the runoff channel away. Piece by piece, the structure took shape. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't elegant. But it was sturdy. The first warmth. By the second cycle, most cadets were miserable, teeth chattering, wings drooping, claws clamped together for warmth. Some had tried huddling in groups, but the cold seeped into their bones. A few had already signaled withdrawal, vanishing in retrieval beams back to the safety of the dome. And yet, from Mason's corner of the training ground, smoke began to rise. The cadets turned as one, eyes wide. Within a crude, leaf-thatched shelter, Mason crouched beside a small fire, its orange glow cutting through the gloom. Water hissed as it ran off the angled roof, leaving the interior dry and warm. Impossible, muttered a scaled Varix, staring at the flames. You had no spark tools. No fuel. Mason shrugged, tossing another stick into the fire. Friction fire. Dry core wood, fibers for tinder, a bow drill. He held up a crude loop of vine and stick. Takes a while, but it works. Jirel sat nearest, shivering less for the first time in hours. Warmth soaked into his fur, and steam rose from his sodden manner. His wide eyes never left the human. You built this, from nothing. Not nothing, Mason corrected. From what was around us. Nature gives you everything you need if you know how to use it. Lessons in the storm. One by one, cadets crawled toward the shelter, curiosity outweighing pride. A winged kivari squeezed in, dripping feathers scattering droplets. A chittering insectoid huddled near the flames, antennae drooping. Even a hulking Vylock predator, too proud to admit weakness, edged into the warmth. Mason didn't object. He just shifted, making room. Why do this? Jirel asked, his voice quiet under the patter of rain. You could have claimed this for yourself. Kept it, forced us away. That is what predators do. Mason looked at him, then at the group crowded in the shelter. Because surviving alone is hard. Surviving together is easier. He smirked. That's what humans do. The aliens exchanged uneasy glances. For species used to solitary hunting, dominance hierarchies, or relying on technology, the concept was strange. But the proof was undeniable. The only dry, warm cadets in the storm were the ones under the human's roof. The dawn after the storm. By the third cycle, the storm began to ease. The clouds thinned, lightning faded, and the first pale light of dawn broke through. The training grounds were wrecked. Mudslick pits, collapsed shelters, cadets curled in misery or already evacuated. Only one group looked alive, alert, and ready, those who had spent the night in Mason's stormproof shelter. Instructor Kelran descended from the dome, talons splashing in the mud. His multifaceted eyes scanned the ruin, then the lone standing structure. He clicked his mandibles. Human. Explain. Mason rose, brushing soot from his hands. We built a shelter. Fire kept us warm. Water ran off the roof. Everyone survived. Kelran's mandibles twitched. With no tools. No supplies. No technology. Yep. Mason grinned. That's survival training back home. You make do. Because if you don't, he gestured at the empty, mud-smeared training grounds. You die. The instructor stared for a long moment. Then he turned to the other cadets. Record what you have witnessed. For the galaxy, this is a lesson. The deathworlders endure because they must. And when they endure, they bring others with them. Jirel, still steaming faintly from his drying fur, whispered, they build from nothing. They endure storms. They do not fall. Epilogue. Weeks later, rumors spread through the academy. Cadets whispered not of predators or technologies, but of the night the storm came and the human who built a shelter from nothing. For the galaxy's future leaders, one truth took root. When chaos fell, when storms raged, when all others broke apart, humans would stand, build, and endure. Because on a death world, there was never another option. And now, the rest of the galaxy knew it too.